Drac crouched low among the purple grass of New Manitoba, his 4 eyes scanning the terrain ahead. The Vryn hunter had traveled across 3 star systems to reach this pathetic human colony. His scales rippled with anticipation as he adjusted the cloaking device on his armor. This world was supposed to be protected, but protected meant nothing when you had the right technology and enough arrogance. The hunting party consisted of 5 Vryn warriors, each a proven killer from the endless peaks of their home world. They had hunted creatures on 40 different planets, collected trophies that made other species tremble. Drac ran his clawed hand across the bones hanging from his belt, each one from a different apex predator. Soon he would add something from this world. His scanner showed movement 300 meters ahead, a group of small humans, juveniles by the look of them, wandering through a forest reserve. Drac clicked his mandibles in what passed for Vryn laughter. Humans were soft creatures, weak and slow. They had no natural weapons, no armor plating, no venom sacs. How they had survived long enough to reach the stars confused most of the galaxy. Young Peter walked behind his classmates, his datapad in hand, as he photographed native plants for his biology assignment. The 10-year-old boy loved these field trips into the wilderness reserve. New Manitoba was nothing like old Earth, but the colony founders had worked hard to bring Earth species here. The forest smelled different. The sky was more orange than blue, but somehow it felt like home. His teacher, Mrs. Davies, led the group along a marked trail. She was explaining how the terraforming process worked, how they had to balance native ecosystems with Earth imports. Peter only half listened. He had spotted a bird with brilliant green feathers perched on a branch just off the path. His datapad identified it as a modified sparrow, adapted for the local atmosphere. Peter stepped quietly away from the group, just a few meters, to get a better angle for his photo. The bird tilted its head, watching him with curious black eyes. He raised the datapad, adjusted the focus, and took 3 quick pictures. Perfect. His mom would love these. When he turned back, the trail was empty. Peter felt his stomach drop. The class had moved on without noticing he had stopped. He could hear their voices, but they sounded farther away than they should. He started walking quickly in the direction he thought they had gone. But the voices seemed to move away faster. Something was wrong. Drac watched the small human stumble through the undergrowth, separated from its group. The fear inducer he had activated was working perfectly. The device created subtle audio distortions, making the boy walk in the wrong direction while thinking he was heading towards safety. It was a tool designed for herding prey into kill zones. The Vryn hunter followed silently, his cloaking technology bending light around his massive frame. He stood 3 times the height of the human child, his muscles capable of crushing steel. This would be almost too easy, but Drac had learned to appreciate the simple hunts as much as the challenging ones. Besides, taking a human trophy might send a message to these colonists about trespassing into territories they did not understand. Peter tried his communicator, pressing the emergency button his parents had made him promise to use if he ever got lost. Nothing happened. The display showed full power but no signal. He pressed it again, harder this time, but still nothing. Stay calm, he told himself. Dad had taught him wilderness survival during their camping trips. Find shelter, stay in one place, and wait for rescue. The Rangers had trackers on all the students. They would find him within an hour. He spotted a rocky outcropping ahead, a small cliff face with what looked like a cave entrance. Perfect. Peter jogged toward it, his heart pounding but his mind focusing on the survival rules he had memorized. Get out of the open. Make yourself visible from the air. Stay warm and dry. The cave entrance was larger than he expected, big enough for him to walk into without ducking. The interior smelled musky like an animal den. Peter hesitated. His survival training said to avoid occupied dens, but his fear of being exposed won out. He would just stay near the entrance where he could see out and be seen. He settled against the rock wall, pulling his jacket tighter. The orange sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the purple grasslands. Peter activated his datapad's beacon function, hoping the Rangers would spot it. Drac emerged from his cloak 30 meters from the cave entrance. He had herded the prey exactly where he wanted it, trapped against the rocks with no escape route. The hunter activated his recording equipment, small drones that would capture every moment of the kill. His clan would want to see this. He walked forward slowly, savoring the moment. The small human had not even noticed him yet, still focused on its primitive communication device. Drac reached for his weapon, a plasma blade that could cut through bone like air. He would make this quick and clean, then he stopped. A sound rolled out from the cave behind the human child. Deep and rumbling like thunder trapped underground. Drac's scanner flickered, showing a heat signature he had not detected before. Large, very large. The sound came again, closer this time. Not thunder, a growl. Peter spun around, pressing his back against the cave wall as something moved in the darkness behind him. He saw eyes first reflecting the fading sunlight, then a shape low and powerful, pushing forward from the depths of the cave. The creature that emerged stood as tall as Peter's waist, covered in thick gray and white fur. Its face was marked with distinctive stripes, and its eyes held an intelligence that made the boy freeze. He recognized it from the colony database, a honey badger, one of the guardian animals. Betty stepped fully into the dying light, her massive bulk blocking the cave entrance. Behind her, deeper in the den, 3 small cubs mewled nervously. She had been sleeping when the strange sounds woke her, and now there was an alien creature near her home and a human child trapped against her den entrance. The badger's lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed by millions of years of evolution to never quit, never surrender, never retreat. The growl that came from her chest was deeper than any sound that small body should make. Drac raised his weapon, no longer amused. The hunt had just become interesting. Peter had never seen anything like the standoff happening in front of him. The massive alien hunter stood frozen, weapon raised, while Betty positioned herself between the threat and her den. The boy was caught in the middle, still tangled in some kind of shimmering net that had appeared from nowhere when he tried to run. The energy net had wrapped around him the moment Drac fired it, pinning Peter's arms to his sides and locking his legs together. He had fallen hard against the rocky ground, scraping his cheek. Now he could only watch as the 2 predators sized each other up. Drac had hunted on 40 worlds. He had faced creatures with acid blood, with electromagnetic pulses, with teeth that could bite through starship hull plating. This small Earth mammal should have been nothing. His scanner told him it weighed perhaps 90 kilograms, had no venom, no natural armor, no energy weapons. Yet something in its eyes made him hesitate. Betty took a step forward. Her claws clicked against the stone, each one as thick as a human thumb and twice as long. The genetic modifications the colony had given her were subtle but effective. Stronger bones, denser muscle tissue, and even more aggressive pain tolerance than her Earthborn ancestors. She was designed to protect the colony's outer farms from the local predators that sometimes wandered too close. Right now, her only focus was the threat standing near her den. Drac decided to end this quickly. He adjusted his plasma blade to low power, enough to kill the animal without damaging the pelt too badly. It would make an interesting addition to his collection. A honey badger, the Galactic database said. Threat level moderate. He had killed moderate threats before breakfast. He fired. The plasma bolt hit Betty square in the chest, a shot that should have stopped her heart instantly. She stumbled, her fur smoking where the energy had burned through. Drac lowered his weapon, waiting for the creature to fall. Betty shook her head like she was clearing away an annoying insect. Then she charged. Peter screamed a warning, but the alien hunter barely had time to raise his arm before 200 pounds of furious badger slammed into him. Drac crashed backward, his armor screeching as claws raked across it. He brought his weapon up, but Betty was already moving, twisting with impossible speed for something her size. She bit down on his weapon arm, her jaws clamping through the armor plating with a crunch that made Peter wince. Drac roared in pain and anger, throwing his weight to dislodge her. Betty held on, her body whipping through the air but her jaws never releasing. The Vrin hunter activated his armor's electric shock defense. 50,000 volts pulsed through the metal plating, enough to kill most organic creatures instantly. Betty's body went rigid, smoke rising from her fur. She bit down harder. Drac finally tore his arm free, stumbling back with deep gouges in his armor. Green blood seeped from the wounds. He stared at the creature in disbelief. Nothing should have survived that shock. Nothing that size should have been able to damage Vrin combat armor. Betty circled him, limping slightly but showing no intention of backing down. Her cubs were behind her, and some instinct older than thought itself told her that retreat meant death for them. So she did what honey badgers had done for millions of years. She attacked again. This time Drac was ready. He met her charge with a powered fist, the servos in his armor multiplying his strength 10 times over. The punch caught Betty in the side, sending her tumbling across the rocky ground. Peter heard ribs crack, saw her body go limp for a moment. Get up, he thought desperately. Please get up. Betty got up. Drac pulled a concussion grenade from his belt, arming it with a click of his mandibles. He would have preferred to take the creature alive, but survival came first. He threw the grenade, watching it arc through the air toward the badger. Betty caught it in her mouth. For a moment, even Drac was too shocked to move. Then the grenade exploded and the world turned white and loud. The shockwave threw Peter against the cave wall despite the energy net. His ears rang, and he could not see anything through the dust and smoke. When the air cleared, Betty was still standing. Her face was burned, one eye swollen shut, blood dripping from her nose and mouth. She swayed on her feet like a drunk person. But she was standing, and she was still between Drac and her den. The Vryn hunter activated his emergency beacon. This was no longer a hunt. This was a fight for survival, and he needed backup. His pride could be salvaged later. Right now, he needed to understand what he was facing. 2 more Vryn hunters materialized from their cloaking fields, weapons ready. They had been watching from a distance, amused by what they thought would be a quick kill. Now they saw their leader bleeding, his armor damaged, facing a creature 1/10 his size. Betty saw 3 enemies now instead of 1. The odds did not matter. The mission had not changed. Protect the den, protect the cubs, never retreat. These were not thoughts in her mind, but instincts burned into her DNA by Earth's brutal evolutionary crucible. She roared again, and the sound echoed across the valley like a challenge to the universe itself. Peter managed to activate his communicator's emergency function with his chin, the only part of him not trapped by the net. A simple SOS pulse repeating every 5 seconds. He did not know if anyone would hear it through whatever was jamming the signal, but he had to try. In the sky above, a ranger patrol detected the pulse and changed course. On the ground, Betty charged at 3 alien hunters simultaneously. Drac and his companions opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts, shock rounds, sonic disruptors. The badger should have been vaporized, should have been blown apart, should have been anything except what she was. Still coming. She hit the first hunter low, her claws finding the weak points in his knee joints. The Vryn fell and Betty was already moving to the next one. Teeth found flesh, claws found soft spots, and ancient earth fury met alien arrogance. The second hunter grabbed her by the scruff of her neck, lifting her off the ground with his superior strength. Betty twisted in his grip, ignoring the pain, and sank her teeth into his wrist. The hunter dropped her with a scream. Drac fired his plasma blade at point-blank range, scoring a deep hit across Betty's back. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. The badger stumbled, went down on one knee. Then she got back up. Peter was crying now, not from fear for himself, but from watching the brave animal take punishment that should have killed her 10 times over. He understood now why the colony had brought these creatures from Earth. They were not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. They just refused to die. Betty faced 3 hunters, her body broken and bleeding, smoke rising from a dozen wounds. Behind her in the den, her cubs whimpered. She took another step forward and then another, each movement an act of pure will. Drac finally understood what he was facing. Not just an animal, a product of Earth, a world that had tested life harder than any other planet in known space. A creature born from billions of years of never giving up, never surrendering, never accepting defeat. He raised his weapon one more time. Atmospheric vehicles screamed overhead, Ranger response teams incoming. The real fight was just beginning. The Ranger vehicles hit the ground with a thud that shook the earth, their engines screaming as they braked hard. Captain Ross was out before the transport fully stopped, her rifle already tracking toward the alien signatures her scanner had picked up. She had been a ranger on New Manitoba for 12 years, and she had never seen Vryn hunters this far into colony territory. Behind her, 6 more rangers deployed in standard formation, weapons ready. Then Ross saw Betty and her blood went cold. The badger was barely standing, her fur matted with blood and burn marks, facing down 3 Vryn hunters. Near the cave entrance, a small human boy was trapped in an energy net. "Free the kid first," Ross ordered. "Davis Collins, get that net off him. Everyone else covering positions. Do not fire unless I give the order." 2 rangers sprinted toward Peter while the others established a defensive perimeter. Drac turned his massive head toward the new arrivals, his weapon still pointed at Betty. The badger had not moved, had not even acknowledged the humans. Her entire focus remained on the aliens threatening her den. Ross raised her voice, speaking through her helmet's translator. "You are in violation of Galactic Treaty 7, hunting on a protected colony world. Power down your weapons and prepare for arrest." Drac laughed, the sound like rocks grinding together. "You dare threaten Vryn hunters, human? We go where we please, take what we want. Your treaties mean nothing." "That badger seems to disagree," Ross said calmly. She had dealt with enough alien raiders to know that showing fear only made things worse. "I suggest you leave while you still can." One of the other Vryn hunters, his armor torn and leaking green blood, snarled at her. "We do not retreat from prey. Especially not from some pathetic earth animal." Ross almost smiled. Almost. "That pathetic earth animal just kicked your asses. Cut your losses and go." The rangers finished cutting through the energy net, and Peter stumbled free into their arms. One ranger immediately started checking him for injuries, while another wrapped him in a thermal blanket. The boy kept trying to look back at Betty, tears streaming down his face. "Is she going to be okay?" Peter asked. "She saved me. She fought them all. She's a guardian," the ranger holding him said gently. "Toughest creatures in the colony. She'll be fine." But even as he said it, the ranger was not sure. Betty looked like she should have been dead 3 times over. Her breathing was labored, her body trembling from shock and pain, yet she still stood her ground, still protecting her den. Drac made his decision. These humans thought they could interfere with Vryn business. He would teach them otherwise. He signaled his companions with a click of his mandibles, and all 3 hunters raised their weapons toward the rangers. That was when Betty moved. Despite her injuries, despite the pain that should have paralyzed her, she lunged at Drac with speed that shocked everyone watching. Her jaws clamped onto the hand holding his weapon, and she twisted her entire body weight, using leverage and fury to tear the gun from his grip. The weapon clattered across the rocks as Drac roared in rage and pain. He grabbed Betty with his free hand, his strength allowing him to lift her off the ground. The badger twisted in his grip like a tornado, claws raking across his face and chest, teeth snapping at anything within reach. The other 2 Vryn hunters tried to get a clear shot, but their leader and the badger were moving too fast, locked in a deadly embrace. One hunter tried to grab Betty from behind, and she somehow managed to kick backward with enough force to crack his chest plate. Ross watched in amazement. She had seen Betty chase off local predators before, had watched her clear a nest of rock scorpions single-handedly. But this was different. This was a creature fighting beyond its physical limits, running on pure determination and ancient instincts. "We need to help her," Peter shouted, trying to break free from the ranger holding him. "Kid, the best thing we can do is stay out of her way," Ross said. But she was already moving forward, her team following. "Vryn hunters, this is your final warning. Drop your weapons and surrender, or we will use lethal force." Drac threw Betty against the cliff wall with terrible force. The badger hit hard enough to crack the stone, then slid to the ground in a heap. This time she did not get up immediately. Her sides heaved, blood pooling beneath her, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. The Vryn hunter picked up his weapon, his mandibles spread in victory. "See? Everything dies when you hit it hard enough. Even your precious earth animals." Then Betty opened her eyes. The growl that came from her throat was not loud, but it carried across the battlefield like a promise. She rolled onto her stomach, then pushed up with her front legs. Her back leg was clearly broken, but she put weight on it anyway, standing on 3.5 legs, swaying but upright. "How?" the wounded Vryn hunter whispered. "What kind of creature is this?" "The kind that evolved on Earth," Ross said quietly. She had studied Earth biology as part of her ranger training, had learned about the honey badger's incredible pain tolerance, its aggressive nature, its absolute refusal to quit. But knowing about it and watching it were 2 completely different things. Betty took a step forward, dragging her broken leg. Then another step. The Vryn hunters backed up, their earlier confidence crumbling. They had hunted across dozens of worlds, had faced creatures with better weapons, stronger bodies, deadlier abilities. They had never faced anything that simply would not stop. Drac fired his weapon again, catching Betty in the shoulder. The plasma bolt burned clean through, and everyone heard the bone crack. Betty went down on her front knees, her breathing ragged and wet. Blood bubbled from her mouth. "Stay down," Drac growled. "Just die already." Betty raised her head and looked at him with her one good eye. Then impossibly she started to get back up. Peter was sobbing now. The ranger holding him had tears on her own cheeks. Ross felt something break inside her chest at the sight of this brave animal refusing to give in. She made a decision that might cost her career, but she did not care. All rangers open fire on the Vrin hunters. Authorization code Ross 7 Alpha. Protect the Guardian. The night lit up with weapons fire as 7 ranger rifles opened up simultaneously. The Vrin hunters' shields flared, absorbing the initial barrage, but the sustained fire began to punch through. Drac roared orders to his companions, and the 3 aliens began a fighting retreat toward their ship. Betty collapsed fully now, her strength finally gone. But her head remained up, her eye still tracking the aliens as they fled. She had done her job. The threat was leaving. Her cubs were safe. Ross sprinted to the Badger's side, pulling out her medical kit. "Hang on, girl. We've got you now," Betty growled weakly, a warning not to approach her den. Even now, broken and bleeding, her instincts would not let her trust anyone near her cubs. I know, Ross said softly, staying at a careful distance. "You're a good mom, the best. But we need to help you, okay? Just let us help." In orbit above New Manitoba, the Vrin commander watched his hunting party retreat with heavy losses. His screen showed the recording from Drac's armor, and he replayed the fight 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. One creature, weighing less than 100 kilograms, had held off 3 Vrin elite hunters. He pulled up the Galactic database entry for honey badgers and began to read. What he found made his scales itch with something he had not felt in years: fear. The Vrin ship hung in orbit like a wounded predator, its hull scarred from dozens of previous hunts. Inside the medical bay, Drac lay on a regeneration table while medical drones worked to repair his damaged armor and flesh. His pride hurt worse than his wounds. The other 2 hunters from the ground team were in similar condition. One had lost 3 claws, torn out by roots when Betty had somehow leveraged him into a flip. The other had a cracked chest plate and puncture wounds that kept reopening despite the medical foam. Commander Voss entered the medical bay, his 4 eyes cold with anger. He was older than Drac, his scales scarred from a lifetime of successful hunts. He had built a reputation across the galaxy as a hunter who never failed, never retreated, never showed mercy. "Explain," Voss said, his voice quiet and deadly. Drac tried to sit up, winced, and settled back down. "Commander, the creature was enhanced. It had to be. No natural animal could have survived what we threw at it." "The scans show minimal genetic modification," Voss replied. "Enhanced bone density, improved muscle structure, nothing beyond what humans do to all their guardian animals. What it does show is that you were beaten by a creature 1/10 your size with no weapons, no armor, and no support." The wounded hunter with the cracked chest plate spoke up. "Sir, you should have seen it. We hit it with everything. Plasma fire, concussion grenades, direct physical strikes. It just kept coming, like it did not feel pain." "Honey badgers have an extremely high pain tolerance," Voss said, reading from his datapad. "Thick skin resistant to most bites and stings. Aggressive territorial behavior. Known to fight off lions, hyenas, and other African predators multiple times their size. They are, according to this report, one of the most fearless animals on Earth." Drac managed a bitter laugh. The database said moderate threat level. "The database was written by species that never had to face Earth evolution," Voss said. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history. "Look at this world. Ice ages that covered continents. Asteroid impacts that killed 90% of all life. Predators that grew to 30 meters long. Diseases that swept through populations. Natural disasters every few thousand years." The hologram zoomed in to show various Earth creatures. Lions, bears, sharks, crocodiles, snakes, spiders, and dozens more. "This is the environment that forged every species humans brought to the stars with them. They did not bring their weakest creatures. They brought their survivors, their fighters, their absolute toughest." Another hunter entered the medical bay, carrying what remained of Drac's armor. The chest plate had 4 deep gouges through military-grade metal that was supposed to withstand ship-to-ship weapons fire. "Sir, I ran an analysis on the damage. The bite force required to do this exceeds what our database predicted by a factor of 3. Voss studied the ruined armor. "Because the database is wrong. About honey badgers, about Earth creatures, and probably about humans themselves. We have been operating under false assumptions." He pulled up another file. This one showing combat reports from various conflicts involving human forces. "Look at these patterns. Humans rarely win through superior technology or physical strength. They win by refusing to quit. They take casualties that would make any sane species surrender. And they keep fighting. They lose battles and still find ways to win wars. They learned it from their planet, Drax said quietly, understanding dawning. Earth taught them that survival means never giving up. Exactly, Voss said. And they brought their teachers with them. These guardian animals are not pets or livestock. They are living examples of Earth's evolutionary philosophy. Fight until you win or die. There is no middle ground. On the surface of New Manitoba, veterinary specialists worked frantically to save Betty's life. They had transported her to the main colony medical center, a facility designed to handle both human and Earth animal emergencies. Peter had refused to leave, and after some arguing, Captain Ross had allowed him to stay in the waiting area. Dr. Hayes, the colony's chief veterinarian, emerged from surgery after 6 hours. She looked exhausted but cautiously optimistic. She's stable. We had to rebuild most of her skeletal structure with surgical mesh, repair 3 organs, and regrow a significant amount of tissue. By all rights, she should be dead 5 times over. But she'll live? Peter asked desperately. She'll live, Hayes confirmed. Though she'll need months of recovery. We're keeping her sedated for now. Her pain tolerance is so high that she might try to move before her body is ready, and that could undo all our work. Ross nodded. What about her cubs? Another team is caring for them. They're healthy, just scared. Once Betty is recovered enough, we'll reunite them. Hayes looked at Peter. You know, she fought that hard because you were near her den. Honey badgers are incredibly protective of their territory and their young. She probably saw you as another cub to defend. Peter wiped his eyes. Can I see her? Just for a minute? Hayes considered, then nodded. Brief visit. She's unconscious, but animals sometimes respond to familiar voices. They led Peter into the recovery room where Betty lay on a specialized table, tubes and monitors attached to her body. She looked small and vulnerable now, so different from the fury he had witnessed. He approached slowly, careful not to disturb any of the medical equipment. Thank you, Peter whispered. You saved my life. You did not have to, but you did. I will never forget that. Betty's breathing remained steady and slow, the sedatives keeping her deep under, but one of the monitors showed a spike in her brain activity, just for a moment, as if some part of her recognized his voice. Outside the medical center, news of the incident was spreading across the colony's communication network. Someone had leaked footage from the Ranger body cameras, and within hours it went viral, not just on New Manitoba, but across human space and eventually into the wider galactic network. The video showed everything. Betty standing against the Vrin hunters, taking hit after hit and refusing to fall, protecting a human child with the same ferocity she showed for her own cubs. It was raw, brutal, and undeniable proof of what Earth creatures were capable of. Within a day, the galactic database entry for honey badgers was updated. Threat level changed from moderate to extreme. The notes section filled with warnings from species who had previously thought Earth animals were harmless curiosities. Do not engage under any circumstances. Pain tolerance beyond measurement. No surrender reflex. Will fight to mutual destruction if threatened. Recommend maximum caution around all Earth species. The Vrin Empire released an official statement claiming their hunters had been conducting scientific research and had been unfairly attacked. Nobody believed it. The footage showed clearly what had happened, and the galaxy's opinion of the Vrin dropped while respect for Earth creatures rose. Drac, recovering in orbit, watched the news coverage with mixed emotions. His career as an elite hunter was over. His reputation was destroyed, but he found himself obsessed with learning more about Earth, about the planet that could produce such incredible survivors. He requested access to human educational databases and began studying Earth's history. The dinosaurs that ruled for millions of years before dying in fire, the ice ages that forced early humans to adapt or perish, the countless predators and diseases and disasters that culled the weak and forged the strong. We thought they were weak because they looked soft, Drax said to his reflection. We did not understand that on Earth looking dangerous is less important than being impossible to kill. Commander Voss appeared in the doorway. The Empire has decided to issue a formal apology to the human colony. We are also being reassigned to hunting preserves far from human space. Good, Drax said. I have no desire to face another honey badger, or any other Earth creature for that matter. Voss nodded. I am putting together a report for the Empire's military commanders. The humans are not to be underestimated, not because of their technology or numbers, but because of what their homeworld taught them. He pulled up one final image, a picture of Earth from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It looked peaceful and beautiful. "This planet," Voss said quietly, "is the most dangerous hunting ground in the galaxy, and the humans brought the hunters with them." 3 weeks after the incident, Peter sat in his classroom struggling to focus on his math assignment. Numbers blurred together on his datapad as his mind wandered back to the rocky outcropping, to Betty's defiant stance, to the sound of plasma fire and breaking bones. His teacher had excused him from the wilderness field trips until he felt ready, but Peter was not sure he would ever feel ready. During lunch break, he walked alone to the edge of the school grounds where he could see the medical center in the distance. Betty was still there, still recovering. The doctor said she was improving faster than they expected, but that was not saying much given how badly she had been hurt. "Hey, Peter," a voice called. He turned to see his classmate Amy approaching with 2 other students. "We are working on something and wanted to know if you would help." Peter shrugged. "I guess. What is it?" Amy pulled out her datapad showing a petition. "We are asking the Colony Council to give Betty a medal. You know, for protecting a citizen and defending colony territory. Rangers get medals for that kind of thing. Why not guardian animals?" Despite everything, Peter felt a small smile. "You think they will go for it?" "Already got 2,000 signatures," another student said proudly, "including Captain Ross and most of the Ranger Division. Your mom signed it too." Peter took Amy's datapad and added his own signature. "Thanks for doing this." "Betty's a hero," Amy said simply. "Heroes should be recognized." Far above New Manitoba, in a luxury transport ship heading back toward Vryn space, Drax stared out at the stars and tried to understand what had happened to his life. The Empire had not punished him officially, but the whispers had already started. Drac the Foolish. Drac who fled from an Earth animal. Drac who needed rescue from a creature smaller than his weapon. His communicator chimed with an incoming message. He almost ignored it, but the sender code made him pause. It was from Professor Nim, a Vryn scholar who specialized in xenobiology. "I saw your report on the honey badger encounter," the message read. "Would you be willing to discuss it in detail? I am researching Earth species for a new academic publication, and your experience would be invaluable." Drac thought about deleting the message. Talking about his failure was the last thing he wanted. But something made him respond. "What do you want to know?" The reply came quickly. "Everything. How it moved, how it reacted to damage, its decision-making process. I have studied Earth creatures for 20 years, and I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood them." Over the next several hours, Drac found himself in a detailed conversation with the professor. He described every moment of the fight, every wound Betty had taken and kept fighting through, every tactical decision that had failed because the creature did not behave like any predator he had faced before. "You see," Professor Nim wrote, "most predators have a survival calculation. If prey is too dangerous, they retreat to hunt again another day. But Earth predators, especially the smaller fierce ones like honey badgers, wolverines, and shrews, they evolved in an environment where backing down meant death, so they removed the retreat option from their behavior entirely. That makes them insane," Drac typed back. "No, it makes them survivors. Earth went through extinction events that killed 90% of all species, multiple times. The creatures that made it through were not always the biggest or strongest. They were the ones too stubborn to die." Drac thought about Betty, standing on a broken leg, blood streaming from dozens of wounds, still defending her territory. "The humans are like that too." "Of course they are," Nim replied. "They learned from the best teachers in the galaxy, their own planet." Back on New Manitoba, Dr. Hayes was supervising Betty's first attempt at walking since the surgery. The badger was awake now, still heavily medicated but alert enough to recognize her surroundings. Her cubs had been brought to visit under careful supervision, and the reunion had been emotional even for the hardened medical staff. Betty took one careful step, then another. Her rebuilt leg held, the surgical mesh providing support while her natural bone regrew. She sniffed the air, processing dozens of scents that told her where she was and what had happened. "Easy, girl," Hayes said softly. "You are doing great. Just take it slow." Betty ignored her and took 3 quick steps toward the door. Alarms beeped as medical monitors protested the sudden movement. Hayes moved to intercept, but Captain Ross, who had been observing from the doorway, held up a hand. "Let her go," Ross said. "She wants to check her den." Make sure her cubs are really safe. She is not ready for that kind of journey, Hayes protested. Doctor, that badger fought 3 alien hunters on a broken leg. I do not think we can stop her from doing what she needs to do. Ross pulled out her communicator. I will arrange transport. We will take her back to her den site, let her inspect it, then bring her back for continued recovery. An hour later, a ranger vehicle touched down near the rocky outcropping. Betty limped out before the ramp fully extended, her nose working overtime. The area still smelled of plasma fire and alien blood. She moved toward her den entrance, checking every corner, every shadow. Her cubs had been kept safe in the medical center, but Betty did not know that with absolute certainty. She had to see for herself that her home was secure. She pushed into the den, her eyes adjusting to the darkness, and found it empty but undamaged. When she emerged, Peter was standing near the entrance with Captain Ross. The boy had begged to come along, and Ross had agreed despite her better judgment. Betty froze, seeing the small human who had been at the center of the fight. For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Betty limped forward and sniffed Peter's outstretched hand. The boy smelled of fear and sadness and gratitude. Betty huffed once, acknowledging him, then turned and made her way back to the transport vehicle. I think she remembers you, Ross said quietly. I will always remember her, Peter replied. In the Vrin medical database, doctors were updating treatment protocols based on the damage Betty had inflicted. Bite force measurements were revised upward. Pain tolerance scales were recalibrated. Warning flags were added to any mission profile involving Earth fauna. The head medical officer sent a confidential report to military command. We have identified a critical gap in our combat preparation. Vrin hunters are trained to face creatures that follow predictable survival patterns. Earth species, particularly the smaller predators, do not follow these patterns. Recommend mandatory training on Earth biology before any operation in human space. Military command rejected the recommendation as unnecessary. After all, it was just one incident with one animal. How dangerous could Earth creatures really be? That attitude would change in the coming years as more species encountered Earth's exported fauna. Bears that shrugged off energy weapons, geese that attacked armored vehicles, hippos that turned entire riverbanks into no-go zones. Each incident added to a growing galactic understanding. Earth was not a paradise world. It was a proving ground, and humanity had brought the final exam with them to the stars. Peter returned to school the next day with a new determination. He had always loved biology, but now he had a purpose. He wanted to study Earth animals to understand what made them so special, to help protect them as Betty had protected him. During science class, his teacher asked students to share what they wanted to be when they grew up. Peter raised his hand. I want to be a xenobiologist, he said, specifically studying Earth species and how they adapt to colony worlds. I want to make sure everyone understands how important these animals are and how much we can learn from them. His teacher smiled. That is an excellent goal. What inspired this interest? Peter thought about Betty, standing against impossible odds, refusing to quit even when any rational creature would have fled. He thought about the lesson she had taught not just him but the entire galaxy. Someone showed me what it means to never give up, Peter said. I want to help others learn the same lesson. 5 years had passed since the incident at the rocky outcropping. Peter, now 15 years old, stood at the entrance to New Manitoba University's Xenobiology department with his acceptance letter clutched in his hand. He had tested into their early admission program, one of only 3 students his age to qualify. His entire focus had been on this goal since the day Betty saved his life. The university campus sprawled across a hillside overlooking the colony's main settlement. Earth trees mixed with native flora, creating a strange but beautiful hybrid ecosystem. Peter could see the wilderness reserve in the distance, a vast protected area where guardian animals roamed free. His communicator buzzed with a message from Captain Ross. Heard about your acceptance. Congratulations. Betty would be proud. Peter smiled at that. Betty had fully recovered and returned to her den 2 years ago. Her cubs were grown now, establishing their own territories across the reserve. She had become something of a celebrity, with tourists occasionally trying to glimpse the famous badger. Ross and her rangers worked hard to keep people at a safe distance. Inside the university's main research building, Professor Williams was preparing for her afternoon lecture on Earth fauna adaptation. She had been studying the Guardian program since its inception 15 years ago, documenting how Earth species adjusted to colony worlds. Her work had become required reading across human space. Williams pulled up the latest reports from other colonies. The data was fascinating and sometimes troubling. On New Terra, imported wolves had adapted so well they were outcompeting native predators. On Port Victoria, a population of ravens had learned to operate simple machinery. On Clearwater, hippos had claimed an entire river system and defended it against all comers, including military vehicles. Earth life is aggressive, she typed in her research notes, not because it wants to conquer, but because billions of years of brutal natural selection coded survival into every cell. When we bring Earth species to new worlds, we are not just transplanting animals, we are introducing a fundamentally different approach to existence. Across the galaxy, the story of Betty and the Vryn hunters had become something of a legend. Different species told it in different ways, but the core message remained the same. Do not underestimate Earth creatures. More importantly, do not underestimate the humans who brought them. In a military academy on the planet Centris Prime, alien cadets studied the incident as a case study in tactical miscalculation. The instructor, a grizzled veteran of multiple campaigns, played the footage of Betty's fight without comment. When it finished, he asked the obvious question, what did the Vryn hunters do wrong? One cadet raised a tentacle. They underestimated their opponent based on size and lack of technology. Correct. What else? Another cadet spoke up. They did not research Earth biology before engaging. Their database was outdated and incomplete. Also correct. But there is a deeper lesson here. The instructor pulled up an image of Earth from space. This planet has tested life harder than perhaps any other world we have discovered. Extreme climate variations, regular extinction events, intense competition for resources. The species that survived did so by becoming absolutely relentless. When humans expanded to the stars, they brought this philosophy with them. A third cadet asked, are humans themselves as dangerous as their animals? The instructor laughed, but there was no humor in it. More so, the animals operate on instinct. Humans combine that Earth-forged stubbornness with intelligence, technology, and social cooperation. They are what happens when evolution creates a species smart enough to improve on nature's already brutal design. Back on New Manitoba, Peter attended his first university lecture. Professor Williams stood at the front of the auditorium, her presentation showing various Earth species thriving on colony worlds. People ask me why we brought predators and dangerous animals to our new homes. Williams began. Why not just bring cows, chickens, and pets? The answer is complex, but it comes down to ecosystem balance and cultural identity. We needed Earth's fierce species to control pests, protect agriculture, and maintain biodiversity. But more than that, we needed reminders of where we came from. She pulled up footage of Betty's fight. Peter had seen it 100 times, but it still made his heart race. This honey badger became famous, but she is not unique. Every guardian animal has this same core programming. Defend territory. Protect young. Never surrender. These traits made them survivors on Earth, and they make them invaluable on colony worlds. A student raised her hand. But is not it dangerous to have such aggressive animals near human settlements? Dangerous? Williams smiled. Yes, necessary, also yes. These animals do not just protect us from environmental threats. They remind us of an important truth. We are not the apex predators we are because we are the biggest or the strongest. We are apex predators because we refuse to quit. We learned that from sharing a planet with creatures like honey badgers, and we need to remember it. After the lecture, Peter approached Williams with his research proposal. He wanted to study how guardian animals were adapting to colony worlds, specifically their interaction with human settlements and native ecosystems. Williams read through his proposal, her eyebrows rising. This is graduate-level work. You are 15. I have been researching this topic for 5 years, Peter said. Ever since Betty saved my life. Williams looked up sharply. You are that Peter? The kid from the Vryn incident? Yes, ma'am. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I will approve your proposal on one condition. You treat this scientifically. Betty is famous, but she is still just one example. Your research needs to cover multiple species and multiple colonies. Can you handle that level of work while maintaining your regular course load? I can, Peter said with absolute certainty. 6 months later, Peter published his first paper in the Journal of Xenobiology. It was a meta-analysis of guardian animal incidents across 12 colony worlds, documenting everything from successful pest control to unexpected aggressive behavior. His conclusion was carefully worded, but clear. Earth fauna demonstrates adaptation rates and behavioral flexibility far exceeding predictions. However, this success comes with challenges. These species evolved in Earth's competitive crucible and bring that competitive nature to every new environment. Colony planners must account for this reality in ecosystem management. The paper was downloaded 50,000 times in the first week. It was translated into 17 alien languages and cited in diplomatic discussions about cross-species colony integration. Peter, still technically a high school student, found himself invited to present at the Galactic Biology Conference. Meanwhile, in Vrin space, Drac had made an unlikely career change. After his failed hunt and subsequent obsession with Earth biology, he had become a consultant for the Vrin military. His job was simple: teach hunters and soldiers why Earth species were dangerous. He stood before a class of young Vrin warriors, showing them the same footage that had destroyed his reputation. Watch carefully. Count how many times the creature should have died. I counted 14 separate lethal hits before it finally went down, and even then it survived. A young warrior scoffed. It was lucky. Lucky? Drac's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Let me tell you about luck. I have hunted on 40 worlds, faced creatures that shoot acid, that generate electromagnetic pulses, that have natural armor thicker than our combat suits. None of them scared me like that honey badger did. Because it hurt you? No, because it did not care that I hurt it. Pain means nothing to Earth creatures when they are defending territory or young. They have no off switch, no survival calculation that tells them to retreat. Fighting them is not about who is stronger or better armed. It is about who is willing to take more damage and keep going, and Earth life always wins that contest. He pulled up Earth's evolutionary history, the same information that Professor Nim had shared years ago. This is not just about one badger or one planet. This is about understanding that different worlds create different survival strategies. Earth's strategy was to create life that simply will not die easily. When you face an Earth creature, you are not fighting an individual animal. You are fighting 4 billion years of evolution that says survive at any cost. The classroom was silent now, the young warriors no longer scoffing. Drac had their attention. The humans brought these teachers with them to the stars, he continued. Every colony has guardian animals. Every human settlement is protected by creatures that embody Earth's philosophy of never surrendering. If you ever find yourself in conflict with humans, remember this: the animals are the easy part. The humans learned the same lessons, but they learned them with intelligence and technology added to the mix. Back on New Manitoba, Peter walked through the wilderness reserve with a ranger escort. He was collecting data for his next paper, but he had a personal errand too. After getting permission from Captain Ross, he hiked to the familiar rocky outcropping. Betty's den was still there, though Betty herself had moved to a new territory deeper in the reserve. Peter placed a small memorial plaque near the entrance, working quickly before any current residents objected to his presence. The plaque read, "Here a honey badger taught the galaxy what Earth already knew. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fighting despite impossible odds because what you protect matters more than what you risk." In memory of all Earth's creatures who refused to surrender. Peter stepped back to admire his work, then froze. At the edge of the clearing, Betty stood watching him. She was older now, her muzzle showing gray, but her eyes still held that fierce intelligence he remembered. For a long moment, human and badger regarded each other. Then Betty huffed once, turned, and disappeared into the undergrowth. Peter understood the message. She remembered him too. As he hiked back to the ranger station, Peter thought about the research he still wanted to do, the papers he would write, the lessons Earth's creatures could teach. He thought about Betty, about her cubs who now had cubs of their own, about all the guardian animals protecting colonies across human space. The galaxy was slowly learning what New Manitoba already knew. Earth had sent its children to the stars, and those children had brought their teachers. Not in classrooms or databases, but in the form of creatures that embodied a simple truth. Never give up. Never surrender. Protect what matters with everything you have. That was Earth's message to the universe, delivered by the smallest, fiercest ambassadors anyone could imagine. And the universe was finally learning to listen.